Part 1. The Sound of Silence in. A cold stone monastery tucked deep within the foggy hills of medieval England, life moved slower than the dripping wax on a candle. Every day began before sunrise, with the echo of a single bell calling the monks from their hard straw beds. They rose in silence, not because they wanted to, but because they had taken vows to avoid unnecessary speech. For many, that vow had lasted decades. Brother Elfric, like dozens of his fellow monks, woke before the light touched the windows. His room, barely larger than a coffin, held one candle, one book, and one wooden cross. There were no decorations, no warmth, and certainly no excitement. The monks believed peace came from emptiness, and Elfric's life was the perfect example of that belief. When the bell rang again, he joined the line of hooded figures walking slowly through the corridor. Their soft sandals whispered over the stone floor as they filed into the chapel. The air smelled of cold wax and old wood. No one spoke. No one even coughed. It was as if time itself had fallen asleep inside these walls. After hours of chanting and the same lines repeated day after day came the first meal. Bread, water, and a spoonful of boiled vegetables. Sometimes, on holy days, a bit of cheese. Elfric ate in silence, staring at the same cracked bowl he'd used since he was a young novice. Outside, life went on. Travelers passed, kings fought wars, merchants sold silk. But within these stone walls, every day was the same. And that, to the monks, was exactly the point. Part 2. Days that never changed. As the sun climbed higher, the monastery courtyard filled with quiet motion. Silent work, deliberate and unhurried. Some monks tended small gardens, their rough hands gently patting soil around onions and herbs. Others copied manuscripts inside the scriptorium, dipping their quills into ink so slowly it was as if time itself feared to move too fast. Brother Elfric belonged to the scribes. His task was to copy the same book he had been transcribing for the last 8 years, a collection of sermons he would never preach. Each letter was drawn by hand, each page taking weeks of work. He would sit hunched over a wooden desk, eyes tired from candlelight, hands stiff in the cold air. Yet he found a strange comfort in the rhythm. Scratch, pause, dip, repeat. When he looked up, he saw the same faces, the same bent backs, the same rows of parchment stacked neatly on the shelves. Outside, birds sang and seasons changed. Inside, nothing ever did. The monotony was not a punishment. It was a purpose. The monks believed that through repetition, the soul could quiet itself enough to hear God's whisper. At midday, the second bell rang. Work stopped instantly. No one spoke. They lined up again for prayer, bowing heads beneath the heavy silence. Afterward came their only meal with more than one ingredient, vegetable stew with small bits of barley. A feast by their standards. By afternoon, the world seemed frozen again. The scriptorium filled with the soft scratching of pens and the faint flicker of light as candles burned down to stubs. In the distance, the bell tower stood tall, a patient keeper of time that didn't seem to matter anymore. Brother Elfric sometimes wondered if he would ever finish his book. But then again, finishing wasn't the goal. Living quietly, that was enough. Part 3. The quiet end of a quiet life. As night fell, the monastery sank into near-total darkness. The last bell rang softly across the courtyard, echoing through the cold stone halls. One by one, the candles were snuffed out, leaving only thin trails of smoke curling into the shadows. Brother Elfric closed his manuscript, his day's work finished. 3 lines of perfect Latin text, identical to the day before. He rose slowly from his chair, his knees stiff, his body tired, but his mind strangely peaceful. The path back to his cell was lit by a single torch. Outside, the wind brushed against the walls like a whisper, and the stars blinked faintly through narrow slits in the ceiling. The monastery had no noise, no laughter, no argument, only the sound of sandals on stone. Before sleep, Elfric knelt by his bed. He did not pray for change or excitement. He prayed for stillness, for another day exactly like the last. In his world, boredom was not a curse. It was a kind of devotion. The stiller his days became, the closer he believed he was to the eternal silence of heaven. As his candle burned low, the wax pooled at its base. He laid down on his rough straw mattress, the same one he'd used for 40 years. The moonlight touched the stone wall beside him, tracing faint patterns that never changed. Somewhere, far beyond the monastery walls, kings fought wars, cities burned, and merchants chased gold. But inside these silent halls, time had stopped centuries ago, and in that quiet, that endless, uneventful quiet, Brother Elfric found the only peace he had ever needed.